if I haven't had depression up until this point, why do I need to be sentenced to it for the rest of my life? This doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to take the antidepressants. I'm not going to listen to you. And if I don't figure this out, I'm going to just kill myself because I don't want to live like this. He asked me one question that was the beginning of everything for me. He kept saying, who told you you had to do that for everyone? And I was like, what do you mean I have to? Who told me? If I don't, everything's going to come down, blah, blah, blah. And he kept asking the question, who told you you had to do that for everyone? And I was like, you're not hearing me. I have to do it because blah, blah, blah. And he would say, again, who told you you had to? And I eventually heard the question and I was like, who did tell me I had to play this role? Like, no one explicitly told me I had to do all of this. So if I have done all of this, if I've stepped into this role, I've trained people to be this way with me. And that was the aha moment.
Your opinion is your opinion. Perspective is your perspective. But do not confuse them with fact or truth.
We make mistakes.
We learn.
We grow.
We share.
Shamelessly.
This is Shameless Tuesdays,
The digital transformation podcast brought to you by Transformation Leader.
Shameless family, good day, and welcome to today's episode. My name is Dzikamai Gangaidzo. I, first and foremost, I'm a mining engineer, but I'm also the host of the Shameless podcast. And today we've got Adaku here today. Absolutely fantastic. And I'm so excited to have you, the ultimate firstborn daughter. Welcome to the Shameless podcast.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, Adaku, I think, so in today's episode, the title of this episode is Healing as a Leadership Strategy, Why Growth Starts Within. And for me, the excitement of having this discussion is because not only are we going to touch on clinical depression, multiple mental health breakdowns, suicide attempts, but the part of my excitement runs in where we're going to be discovering how you move from that space all the way through to being able to grow, manage a multi-million-dollar or pound company, how you were able to build a certain level of resilience and how you were able to grow whilst healing at the same time. What makes you so exciting as well is the fact that not only was you born in Nigeria, ended up in the UK, London, and then you ended up in Mexico. Again, question, how? You have got a clientele that reaches through and through, and maybe towards the end of the year, you might be in Dubai. Your niche is incredibly interesting because you focus on firstborn daughters. And my first question to you is, I hope you feel comfortable and welcome to the Shameless podcast. And the first question is, how on earth did you end up being so interested in firstborn daughters? That seems like such a unique niche.
Yeah, it kind of happened by accident. So I'm a firstborn daughter myself, and I've been on quite the journey, some of which you've touched upon. And maybe I think what happens when you start to heal yourself is that you start seeing where you were in other people. And maybe that inspired me to use my experience to help others. And I realized that I had quite a gift in it. But as I was working with people and developing my methodology over COVID, I started realizing that women were thriving in my work and everyone else was struggling. And the type of women that were really excelling in my work, which is a little bit intense, is female executives and entrepreneurs. And a year and a half ago, 2 of them asked for coaching on their dynamic in their relationship with their firstborn daughters because they were having challenges resonating with them. And a lot of the things that came up in the coaching were similar things that they had to work through with their own mothers. And that's when I took a step back and said, okay, what is happening here? Why are they recreating the same patterns? And maybe this is a thing that is affecting all firstborn daughters. And I realized, hold on, they're firstborn daughters themselves. I'm a firstborn daughter. And I took a step back and realized that all of my clients up until that point were all firstborn daughters. So I was like, okay, I want to do something to break what seems like a generational curse, which sounds really kind of dark, but there's this generational pattern that is repeating amongst firstborn daughters. And because I have been doing the work with these women for 5 years, understanding those patterns and helping them break it, I thought I could make a huge dent in making sure that we don't recreate the same patterns.
So that's absolutely fascinating. But then my question to you then is, why did you always have an entrepreneurial streak within you? Or did you feel like it's something that because of your upbringing sort of grew, and or is it something that you grew over time to really appreciate that you wanted to be an entrepreneur?
I think it's a bit of both. So I think that maybe it's because I was the firstborn daughter in the role that I played in my family. I kind of felt like I was controlling myself and everyone else. So the thought of reporting to someone was a little bit like, "Ugh, do I do I have to do it then?" But I remember like going into when I had my first job at a call center, I would see things that needed to be improved. I would be kind of like, why are they doing it that way? And if I did it, I would do it different. So I was always kind of putting myself in the position of the owner or the manager and questioning how things were. And I would always make those opinions be heard. Like, hey, like, wouldn't this be a better idea? Kind of thing. And
Would
not at
agree,
all.
yes.
No, not at all. I was the annoying person that was pointing out flaws, and sometimes it was appreciated. Sometimes it was taken on board without like giving me any acknowledgement, but it's fine. It was, so I think that there was, and I remember when I was at uni, I would have conversations with my friends saying like, I'm going to be a millionaire, and while you guys are working for someone else, I'm going to have my own company. So there was eventually, I think the upbringing created this kind of hunger in me to not do it the slow way. And to me, working and like waiting for someone to give you a promotion felt very slow and limiting, and like my success or my growth was in someone else's hands. So my circumstances created the fire to kind of just give myself my own limitlessness in terms of like, I just need to be free of this shell that wants to keep me in a place that I feel like I've outgrown. So I think it's a mixture of the two. There's something that's inherently there. My dad was an entrepreneur. We didn't see each other from the age of 8 till 25. And when he met me, he was like, "You are literally a carbon copy of me."
Of
I
myself.
was like,
Damn it.
"Yes."
You're like, mixed feeling, I'm sure. But so you said the word limitlessness. And obviously you're the founder and CEO of HEAL, which is Healing Entrepreneurs Achieve Limitlessness. And I guess that concept or that notion of limitlessness, what does that mean to you? Because it sounds like you are suggesting that we have a lot more capacity, we've got a lot more potential than we can appreciate.
Yeah, so I was having this conversation with someone recently. I had a friend who said, I'm trying to grow my business to K because like only 10% of entrepreneurs make it over a million. And I was like, what has that got to do with your goals? And but that his goals were based on the limits that were created by statistics. And a lot of us stop ourselves from realizing our own potential because we're looking at our circumstances now. The life I've lived shouldn't have been possible for the circumstances I grew up in. But because I refused to operate within what was in my perspective in that moment, I was able to dream outside. And by dreaming outside, I accessed new people and new experiences, which forced me to dream even bigger. And life is always surprising me in terms of what's possible. So I've kind of resigned to the fact that no matter how good it gets, I have no idea of how good it can be. And that just creates this open space for me to explore and lean into and push the boundaries of. So, yeah.
That's incredibly interesting because that idea notion of the perspective that I have today, I shouldn't it shouldn't dictate how big my dream can be or shouldn't be. But then you talk about you shouldn't be where you are based on the way you started from. Could you shed a bit of light of where you started from and sort of that journey to be like this this idea of limitlessness to you? How is that materialized in your life as an example?
So there are studies that show that people usually don't jump social classes. They stay in the social class and they have children, and those children stay in the social class. And as humans, we're kind of just operating and creating from what we know. So the brain is always trying to keep us safe. And the only thing that we know to protect ourselves from is things that have happened in the past. And if our past experience has been poverty and we're trying to move forward and grow, our reference point is poverty. So poverty ends up feeling safe. Fathoming extreme riches is dangerous to our mind. It's like the 5% of our mind that is conscious can dream and can think about it, but then there's 95% is saying that will never happen to me, and that's not possible for people like me because of all of the um beliefs that we've taken on and experiences that we've seen that kind of anchor us into like, this is who I am and this is my plight. So how that translates for me is that I was born into a wealthy family, which maybe contributed to me believing that there's something else. So up until 6 years old, I was extremely rich. We had drivers, we had cooks, we had nannies, we had all the things from my dad's success. And then his businesses started crumbling. So he moved my mum and me and my siblings to London because my mum was born there. And he said to her, just stay there while I try and figure things out here. But then she went from having so much community, so much abundance, to being in a new country by herself, 3 kids, no community, you know. So, and she was a supply teacher because the qualification she got in India did not translate to Nigeria. And because she didn't have a support network, she couldn't get the education to uplevel her qualifications. So sometimes there was work and sometimes there wasn't. And even though she first went to an area called Golders Green, which is a Jewish area, it's really kind of affluent. The way that the council worked, is supposed to house her in that area if she goes to the council there. But they moved her and referred her to the council in Tottenham, which then shows this kind of systematic racism or whatever you want to call it. So she went from being in an affluent Jewish area to being placed in a local authority that was dealing with an impoverished Black community. So growing up, it was like we had like a really close knit neighborhood. But when I was in my teens, things started to shift. And some of the boys that I grew up with started selling drugs. So a lot of my experiences in that neighborhood were people kind of shooting up on the stairs and we had to walk around them, homeless people that were addicts. And my sisters were in the park once and had to duck because there was a drive-by, and then there was gangs, Tottenham against Wood Green. So it was pretty rough. And I remember my sister coming home from school once and saying, my college, and she said her teacher said, I don't know why you guys are wasting your time studying because you're probably all going to end up in McDonald's. So in areas like that, you have teachers who are not breathing life or speaking life into you. You are surrounded by teenage pregnancy, gang activity, drugs, and it's hard to really dream when your reality is that. And that's why, like, I still have a lot of friends that are kind of stuck in those cycles, and it's no fault of their own. I always say to people that mindset is a privilege, that, and I don't think that many people identify it or talk about how much of a privilege it is. I don't think I'm different to them. Luckily, my mum introduced me to meditation when I was 8 years old, and she gave me a foundation to realize that my inner world is something that I can control and evolve through my relationship with God through meditation. So I think that's what first kind of gave me the foundation to challenge that I don't have to be pulled into that. Also, the role I was playing of looking after my siblings meant I wasn't outside. I was inside cooking, cleaning. I think that contributed. And then once I was able to go to university, that opened my horizons because I was friends now with people that came from all different kind of walks of life, and they had parents that were helping them. I came from an area where everywhere it was normal for everyone to struggle with getting food, and now I'm seeing people have parents who are helping them so that they don't have to work. Meanwhile, I'm working a 40-hour job. So then that started to open my mind. And then I went to my internship in my gap year, and it was in a financial mutual funds company. And I was in the IT side of it, but I was looking at the investors and walking around, and I was like, I'm curious, I'm going to ask questions. And the traders would like play virtual golf. And I said, hey, can I ask you some questions? They said, yeah. It's like, how come you don't work? Why are you playing golf? And they found it funny. And they said the markets are 8 a.m. in the morning and they're open for a period of time. And after that, we don't have to work. And I was like, how much do you earn? They were like, what the hell? And they said, we can earn up to like a few million a year. And I was like, and you don't have to work? I need to figure out how to do this, you know? So I didn't go, oh my gosh, it's only for them. I thought, okay, well, if this is possible, I'm thinking wrong, or I need to think a different way. How can this be possible for me? And it was just those little things that kind of started opening my horizons more and more and more. And the more I was curious and the more I was looking at, okay, well, how can I apply this to me? It allowed me to step into positions that was creating new opportunities for myself.
So then, obviously, the idea of growing up pretty quick meant that your mindset, your perspective on how you looked at life, the seriousness of life, had to really caught up with you quite quickly, or you had to play that role. How do you reflect back on how quick that period was and how that has shaped a lot of what you do, how you think? In particular, I'm curious to understand the good and old of that.
Okay, so
That look on your face was like, whoa, that's a
I'm like, where do
curveball
I
right there.
start? Yeah, no, that's a big question with like a lot of answers. My house was really chaotic growing up. I had a schizophrenic stepdad who was a little bit unpredictable. He wasn't unsafe, but he was unpredictable. So there was that going on. Then there was the lack of food. There was other things going on. So I felt like, and then outside there's teen pregnancies, there's drugs. So I'm like, I've got this load I need to carry to be this example for my siblings, and I need to counteract everything that they're seeing in their reality, and that. So I put pressure on myself really early, and it definitely made me serious. It definitely made me not the nicest person to be around because I was bossy, and I'm like, I'm doing this for your sake. You need to listen to me, and you need to. I was trying to control my mom and trying to control my siblings. So I was very serious. I was very rude, very direct, if I'm being honest. There was just a lot of intensity. There was no form of lightness. I wasn't playful. And that's kind of carried me. I think there's a little bit more softness now, but I definitely am trying to learn how to play. So that's a negative part that came in it. I didn't practice playing as a child. So just being playful now is not as easy. Also, because I was carrying so much, it builds this resilience of I can hold a lot and this strength, but then it means that I don't allow space to honor my feelings when I'm not okay. And that's not a good thing. That's what led to my depression because you can only push down emotions or ignore them for so long. They're eventually going to come to the surface. They're either going to manifest themselves in mental health, in physical illness, or something. And mine was a mental breakdown. So that was a negative. It definitely gave me leadership skills. I learned how to anticipate needs of people. I needed to think about, okay, where am I going to go and make money? How am I going to help contribute to stuff? So I'm able to forward plan and anticipate potential things that can go wrong and act in them now to prevent that. And I get comments a lot that I have really high standards and I carry myself to high integrity. And I think that's just a byproduct of just being in survival mode for so long. It's like I am anticipating how is my actions going to affect everyone else? What is the best course of action? What is the way that I can do this that reduces risk? So my brain is now wired through training of that circumstance to be able to anticipate and react to things. Yeah, there's so much.
And I'm sure we're going to just unpack a few of them as we proceed, but I'm in particular curious about that whole resilience, word resilience, and
Mhm.
this and the notion how you said it is resilience to hold a lot. And that is
Mhm.
typically viewed as you need to build your ability to be resilient. It's typically viewed as a pretty good thing if you are strong, right? Whether male, female, whether firstborn, or whatever it is, you shouldn't be soft to a degree, right? But then you also said that you didn't honor your feelings, and you said that probably had a part to play in your journey to your lowest point. I'm curious to really understand how, for you to just maybe explain that a bit further, because and how that pressure to be resilient translated to that difference between what was happening around you versus what was happening within you.
Okay, so because of the chaos in my household, I felt that if I don't hold everything together, everything will fall apart. It might not have been the truth, but that was my experience. So the reason that builds resilience is because things would explode and I would just go into fixer mode. And I wasn't at the time stopped by things. I didn't take time to be like, oh my gosh, this is so intense. I need to process this. I have other people to think about. I've got to get on. But my brain was like just constantly go mode. So it builds a resilience in terms of if I have a mission in mind, nothing's really going to shake me from that mission. Anything can happen, but I'm able to acknowledge it's happened and just keep moving. And I think a lot of people sometimes are so impacted with things that happen in life, they get stopped. So my circumstances created, if I stop, everyone will die. It was dramatic, but it felt real. And then on the flip side, what I wasn't realizing, so there was a number of things that came into honoring my feelings. Because of the role I played, my mum told me when I was 25, we were having some issues as I was working through the depression phase of my life. And I eventually got to the point where I could forgive her. And I said to her, you know what? I like some of these traits that I've acquired from the role that I played. So I'm not angry with you anymore. I forgive you. And I'm grateful that I even chose it. Let's say my soul chose to play this role. I can see how it served me. And by giving her that permission of like not blaming her, she then apologized when I didn't need. I was like, why didn't you apologize when I needed it? But now you're giving it. So,
Wrong time.
so
You should
yes,
have said that like, yes.
I'll take it. But
But
yeah, but in with her apology, she said to me, I'm sorry I didn't mother or nurture you. I saw you as my husband and you were helping me so much that I was scared that if I treated you like my daughter, you would stop helping me. Which was kind of like, oh my gosh, that's heavy. But as a result, I grew up thinking my mum didn't love me and my mum saw me as an ATM. So if I allowed myself to feel the feelings and the hurt that came with that, I felt like I would cry and wouldn't stop crying. So I had to ignore those emotions. But eventually those emotions caught up with me. And when I was physically exhausted, then it was like I stopped sleeping. And then the lack of sleep with the physical exhaustion, perfect recipe for me to surrender because then all of the emotions came up. I was crying for no reason. I was like, what's going on with me? What are all these emotions? Where have they come from? I was just a mess. And I had to face it. I think that I don't know if you're going to touch on this later, but it's still something I deal with now. There's layers, right? So, working through the depression, I had to deal with a lot of the resentment and the frustration and the feeling unlovable and feeling like I wasn't raised and feeling like I was neglected. All of those things were the things that were showing up as anger, but they were just all just pain. The little girl in me that just wanted to be a kid and wanted to be loved was just like, why did you have me to put me through this type of thing? So that came through when I didn't have any more push left in me.
then at what moments do you then go, do you contemplate suicide? I ask this knowing that it is an incredibly sensitive topic for somebody who might be going through something, but appreciating that have you have gone through a journey that allows for you to be able to talk and reflect upon it because um, I think why I ask it is I think it's incredibly difficult for other people to understand why somebody would get to that space. But then secondly, for somebody who's in that space, for them to be able to then appreciate how they got there and then how to get out.
Yeah, so the breakdown kind of was accelerated because I think it was going to come eventually because how I was living wasn't sustainable. I was working 13 to 15 hours a day and then managing two households and trying to bring up my sibling. It was just too much. In 2012, I decided I was engaged to get married. Everything was paid for, and 4 months before the wedding day, I ended my engagement and I'd known my fiance since the age of 14. So he was very integrated into my life with my family and friends and whatnot. So there was a lot to work through there. And then 3 months later, I was given an ultimatum by the startup that I was working for to either keep my opinions to myself or leave. So that kind of threw me off, and I was like, I guess I'm leaving. That's not really a choice. You're not going to control me. And then I moved into my mom. So I went from having a high flying job, engaged to be married, to being broke and having nowhere to live, single, living with my mom, who I wasn't getting in touch with. And that's when all of the anger, all of the pain, all of the, because I didn't have work to distract myself with. I wasn't out of my mom's house, so she was a constant reminder of the childhood I didn't have. I was blaming her. And all of those feelings kind of culminated in me breaking down. And it was actually a CEO of, the first time I fell into depression, it was the CEO of the job I had before the startup that diagnosed me, because I would be at the desk and I'd run to the bathroom and start crying and then get myself together and go back to the desk. But obviously I looked like I was crying. So he took me to lunch and he was like, "What's going on?" I was like, "I don't know." I just started crying. And then he said, "I think you're depressed." I was like, "I'm not depressed. I'm not weak." And he said, "It's not a weakness, it's just like an injury. If you break your arm, you need to heal it." So it's the same with your mind. If there's must be a way that you've been showing up that has caused you to be in this state. So I'm going to give you 2 months off. I'm going to pay for you to get cognitive behavioral therapy. And hopefully when you come back, you'll be in a good place. And I didn't deal with it then. I did cognitive behavioral therapy, did 3 sessions, felt worse after every one. I was like, this isn't helping. I'm not going to do this. I know what I'm going to do. I'm just going to cut my family off. So I just cut my family off, felt better, went to work, wasn't sustainable. And then these events happened and I fell into depression again. So my fear was depression to me was something that took me from being in control. I thought I was in control and I was controlling everyone's life. And it made me out of control because now this feeling was preventing me from performing. It was hard to get up. It was hard to go to work. It was hard to focus. It was, I was just always crying. So I was trying to like do my way through it. Maybe I need to do something else. And it wasn't shifting it. And I thought, well, if this is what I have to deal with, the doctors weren't helpful either. I think during that time they were saying, okay, well, we'll put you on some antidepressants and this is probably something you're going to battle with for the rest of your life. And I'm like, if I haven't had depression up until this point, why do I need to be sentenced to it for the rest of my life? This doesn't make sense to me. So I'm not going to take the antidepressants. I'm not going to listen to you. And if I don't figure this out, I'm going to just kill myself because I don't want to live like this. So that's how it became an option because I just felt out of control. I didn't feel like myself. I felt like I was in there somewhere, but I couldn't access me. And I was like, if I can't grab that person that is capable and it has energy, I'd rather not live. And that's when the suicidal ideation and then the attempts happened.
Okay. And so then my curiosity is to really turn this conversation through is here now, right?
Mhm.
Meaning that and and the way you're able to talk about it suggests to me that the elements that you've really worked on, worked
Mhm.
through, and you're in a different world relative to where you were at that point. What would you say were three of the strongest hitting steps that you took in order for you to build or start within? I mean, grow within, for you to heal within. I mean, I'm incredibly interested in your journey because I only assume that a lot of what your coaching and a lot of what you offer from a service point of view is is a lived experience, right? It's drawn from a lived experience. So the question is, if you had to choose three things that really were the linchpin of your lowest point to where you are now, knowing full well that you still have a journey to travel, what would those three things be?
So it's not necessarily three things. There's one fundamental thing that I repeated over and over and over again. So I was introduced to a coach. And when I started working with him, there was a point when we first started working, it was just me shouting at him and telling him all the things my family had done.
And he
And
would
he
be
was,
like, whoa.
yeah, he would just let me, what's that word? He was just kind of like entertaining me. Like, okay, what else kind of thing. And I'm like, and they did this and they did that and they just don't care about me. And I just had all of the reasons as to why it's everyone's fault that I am where I am. And then he asked me one question that was the beginning of everything for me. He kept saying, who told you you had to do that for everyone? And I was like, what do you mean I have to? Who told me? If I don't, everything's going to come down, blah, blah, blah. And he kept asking the question, who told you you had to do that for everyone? And I was like, you're not hearing me. I have to do it because blah, blah, blah. And he would say, again, who told you you had to? And I eventually heard the question. And I was like, who did tell me I had to play this role? Like, no one explicitly told me I had to do all of this. So if I have done all of this, if I've stepped into this role, I've trained people to be this way with me. And that was the aha moment that I have a part to play in the position that I'm in. So if I have created it, then I can create something else. So now with everything, I look at what have I contributed to this? Because I tried the changing everyone thing and it doesn't work. If people don't want to change, you can't make them change. If you need people to give you something to feel better, you're going to feel worse for a very, very long time. So that was the first moment of turning everything. Okay, if my finances aren't working, I noticed I had a pattern of making a lot of money and losing a lot of money. I was like, okay, if I'm creating this, how does it serve me to create that? And then I realized when I make a lot of money, I feel pressure to give it away. And then it feels stressful. And so I lose it to give myself a break because then I can say, listen, it's not my fault. I can't help you. Look at my bank account rather than just saying no. So then when I learned how to just say no when I didn't have and only to give from my overflow, my finances stopped yo-yoing up and down. So it was the same with the depression. I had to look at all of the micro decisions that I made in the past and how they were showing up in my current, present, and future interactions to be able to see them as they were occurring and choose something else because I'm like, okay, this path leads me to depression and I don't want it. So now I'm really, really far removed from depression. I know I will never fall into it again. It was about 15 years ago. And yeah, I now kind of focus on moving forward.
But then, like in a space like that, you're really looking at yourself. You're really putting the onus on yourself to be more, to do more, to change something in order for you.
Never to do more, because that's a trap for firstborn daughters. They always
Yeah.
think maybe I need to do something. No, it's a way
Yeah.
of being. Maybe I need to be different in the way that I'm showing up. So a lot of the times when I work with clients, they're already successful, but they're completely maxed out and they're about to burn out. When they start working with me, one of my clients who's now a business partner, she 5x'd her business in 8 months and was working less as a result of doing this work. So it's not always doing more. It's always about doing different. It's like there are ways, micro ways that we are limiting ourselves based on the patterns that we've picked up in our childhood. And if we can see how that's translating. So for example, she's a firstborn daughter and she's used to taking care of everyone and everything. So she was hiring people that she needed to take care of. So then they weren't really adding value to her. They were giving her more work because they needed her for everything. So I was able to help her see how she was hiring them to feel significant. If she let go of needing to feel significant, then she can hire to bring value into the business, which frees her up to focus on the more important task. And now her business is, she started with me, her business was doing 160,000. It's now over 1 million in 2 years. So it's like the growth can be exponential if we start here. Because you can learn about business and do business courses. But if you are getting in the way because of your perspective and your worldview, then that's going to affect how you're able to apply those business or marketing tools and get the results because you are the bottleneck between the manifestation of the thing that you're trying to achieve.
So then, absolutely curious because then now you say microwaves, right? Of being able to move through or to change elements of how you get out of your own way. Can you provide me like 3 examples or 2 examples? One example of some of those things that somebody might be able to practice, and then a very high level, because I don't want to give your secret sauce away, but how then you work with people to then get to a space of actually appreciating and then practicing some of those things.
Yeah, so the reason why this is intense is because it's hard. The work I do is really simple. It's not secret sauce. I help you unnumb yourself. So every time you feel a low vibrational emotion, whether it's boredom, whether it's anger, whether it's frustration, whether it's actual fear, whether all of those low vibrational emotions are fear-based. It's your brain anticipating that something's going to happen or something is happening, so we need to protect ourselves. So the first thing I do is I unnumb people to their emotions. Once they unnumb themselves to their emotions, there's data in the emotions. A lot of the times we just react to our emotions rather than asking ourselves, why am I upset? Why am I angry? Why am I scared? Because then we'll start pulling back the things that have happened in the past and how they're showing up in that moment that you're afraid or you're triggered or whatever it is you're experiencing. Once you can see that, you can then ask yourself, what's the reality of what's happening versus the interpretation that I have that I'm living as true? You know, because I think I said something when I was telling my story in terms of like, I had this story that if I stopped helping everyone, everything will fall apart. So that forced me to think that I need to do all of these things. It's not the truth because I'm undermining that they have the capability and I'm robbing them of the ability to build their own resilience and make their own mistakes and fail. But there was an underlying have no significance in my family and no one will love me and I'd be alone because my mom wasn't loving me. So the way that I was owning a position in the family was playing this role. So I thought I was doing it to help everyone, but really I was doing it to be loved. So it's like there are layers in which we are motivated to do things. And if we can get above the top reactive reason and really peel back into what's really driving me, then we can ask ourselves, are we committed to continuing to do this in order for us to kind of maintain this dynamic? Or am I committed to going against myself, going against my thoughts, going against my feelings and stepping into another way of being, which is what gets you the new results? Because that new way of being will have you take different actions and then it will produce different results. So another example I gave before the electricity cut off is that one of the patterns I realized is that I would make a lot of money and lose it and make a lot of money and lose it. And I had to ask myself, okay, well, if I'm a creator of everything in my reality and it's not got anything to do with external forces, why am I having this yo-yo? And the realization I had is when I have a lot of money, I give it away. It's like, this person's got this problem, and then I feel stressed because then it's like it's running out or I feel like I need to make more. And then I'm like, oh my gosh. So then I lose it. For me to, when people ask me, hey, I need help, I'm like, listen, I can't look at my bank account. To me, it was a valid excuse to just have a break rather than the risk of saying no and then not being loved and then them being angry with me and then being upset with me and me not being a nice person. So because my identity was so structured around helping people, I had to create destruction for myself in order for me to have breathing room. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, I got to practice saying no. And then that was like a big thing. It felt so, like for someone, it seems such a small thing, but to my brain, it's like, everything you built and everyone that loves you are going to just disappear if you say no. So I had to go against that to start saying no. And for years, I've had like stable income, so it's being able to look at the patterns, turn within and really go deeper and deeper and deeper into, okay, but why? And then why? And then what does that get me? And that gets you to the root. And once you see the root, you can either choose to accept it and say, okay, I can see what I'm up to, or you can say, no, I want something else. And I'm willing to go against myself to make that change. And that's why change is so hard for people, because you're literally going against yourself. Your brain, your thoughts, your emotions are saying, no, don't go there. And you have to use your will to push through. And then when you get to the other side, your brain says, oh, we didn't die. Okay, maybe we can loosen on this one. And then you keep doing it. And then your brain says, okay, we'll truck the other one in. We'll now implant this new program in. And that's how you change.
Wow. I mean, I hear this and I cannot help but wonder that journey of you continuously growing, you continuously trying to build and be more. Is that when does it stop? I mean, like, it seems like an incredibly difficult. When do we get a break? I mean, I'm trying to like,
So this is
relax and
interesting.
rest.
My clients ask me that if your life is getting more and more abundant and more happy and more euphoric, why do you want to break from that? It's like it's all perspective, right? Because you
Yes.
can say, I have to do all of this work and it's exhausting and I want to break. You're creating that experience. This is how powerful our internal dialogue is in terms of the experience we have. We can have two people doing the same thing. Someone else, in terms of resilience, someone experiences something and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this happened to me. This isn't fair. And their experience is doom and gloom. And something happens to someone else and they're like, oh my gosh, this
Wow.
happened. What can I learn from this? Wow, what are the lessons? How can I grow? Same thing happened. Two different perspective creates two different experiences, which will create two different outcomes. One will stay stuck and one will move forward. So when you become committed to growth because you are focusing on the euphoria, like when I say that the life I live now, I shouldn't have left, there's an immense gratitude for it. And I know the amount of work that took to get there. So that fuels me to want to keep working. You know, I'm not trying to arrive somewhere because I can't even fathom what is possible to arrive because I couldn't fathom this life I'm living now. You know, I took 2 years, 2.5 years of not working. I was working 4 hours a week, maintaining key clients, and I was traveling and doing what I want. Like I said, I wanted that and then I had it. It's like, who in life do I know that can just take 2.5 years off work just because, you know? So it's like once you see what you create off the back of doing work, why would you want to take a break from it?
That's beautiful because that perspective can be liberating, I guess, is what I've understood.
Everything is perspective. So a lot of people who are struggling, I was depressed because of my perspective. And what changed my life was changing my perspective.
Perspective.
It's simple, but it's not easy. So I do want to, it's like I could say it and it's like, okay, I'm just going to tell myself I'm good, I'm good, I'm good. It's like,
And it's
no, it's a
done.
little bit,
No,
yeah,
yeah.
it's
And
a lot
so,
more work.
you know, and so I think we've
Kind of,
gone forever, really. Yeah,
yeah,
I think we've
exactly.
gone forever. But I have got the quote of the episode. And the quote of the episode is, your opinion is your opinion. Perspective is your perspective. But do not confuse them with facts or truth. And the reason why this resonates with me in relation to this episode is because when you talk about how you had an entire journey, the entire world mapped before you, at the age of 6, you then go to London, living a very affluent life. Your reality changed, perspective changed on what life was. And though you didn't really appreciate and didn't really understand some of the details that you got later on from your mom, you had a perspective of why and what was happening in your world. And then, and that really shaped a lot of how you viewed life and some of the anger and resentment that sort of came before that, after that. And then when you then have this low moment, really, when essentially your all these weights around you, you carrying and trying to drive through and power and be resilient through a lot of different things. I think when you say that, I really got the view that you were looking at life as a role that you were playing and that you are really accustomed to. And a lot of us, a lot of people really carry this responsibility that nobody really asked you to carry, but really you ended up carrying. And that perspective of knowing that you aren't asked, but you've created it, is the strength and or weakness that we end up having. And the strength of what I've really appreciated is you took and changed your perspective. And those studies suggest that you can't or typically don't move social classes. You then said, I have got this limitlessness ahead of me that I am able to do more than I imagine. And you are a living testament to exactly that. Our realities sometimes anchor what we believe, but the belief is founded through the perspective of our life. And sometimes the community that you're within, the surroundings that you're part of, hold you back, really are the force that you're fighting against because they try to reinforce the world that you live in. And through your journey, I really appreciated the idea that you could be at the lowest point. And the reality is that you have the power, you have the will, and as long as you have the will, you can then really look to change that perspective and really fight those really tough moments to be in a space where your mindset is the privilege that you use and lean on to change your perspective. And it's hard to not confuse the truth, that from the truth, because it feels so real and it's so tangible and it's so it's being reinforced with everything around you. But a lot of what you've put forward to me within this conversation shows me that if you're able to reach out and forgive your mom, you're able to reach out and understand yourself, you're able to peel back the multiple layers to understand what really motivates you, what really drives you, and understand the new way of being that you could have if you know what you want or if you drive it from a more healthy space. And you then are able to drive and dictate that future that you're really looking forward to. And those microwaves, those small adjustments to your perspective, though not sound easy in a textbook, is the journey that you not only have lived, but what you offer. Adaku, it's been an absolute pleasure having you today. And I think a lot of the listeners and those people who have the honor of actually working with you, engaging with you, I think the journey that you're on and you've been on, I think is a testament to the resilience of somebody, but also more so than anything is that the power is within and the journey actually starts from within. And for me, the healing as a leadership strategy, the growth of that, of being a leader, has to start from the place of tranquility from within so that you're able to be more, do more, and be sustainable in what that looks like. I've really enjoyed our conversation. Very insightful, very interesting, very entertaining. And I've had multiple episodes, but this one, I've had multiple issues whilst we're shooting this. And I really thank you for your patience and your insights. So thank you so much.
Well, thank you for having me on. I've enjoyed the conversation. Hope your listeners get value from it.
And we'll make sure we post everything underneath so that people, when they want to get in touch with you, they can do that. And we're able to continue this conversation going forward. Thank you so much for taking the time out.
Thank you. All right. Take care. Bye.
This podcast is brought to you by Transformation Leader. You can follow us at www.t4leader.com.